Hey everybody, this is Donovan from Springfield Music, and I want to welcome you to Mo Better Bands, which is both a podcast and a YouTube channel where we talk with instrumental music educators in Missouri and Kansas about their programs, their successes, their challenges, and so much more. If there's a topic or an educator that you'd like to hear, drop me an email at donovan@springfieldmusic.com. That's DONOVAN at springfieldmusic.com. Okay, let's get to today's guest.
So all right. So we spent the previous episode talking about your thoughts on band methods and kind of this beginning approach, and even learned how to whisper to horses, and which was completely unexpected, but very enlightening. So let's talk about life and teaching in a rural school. So many times, I think when students are getting their music education degree, they have these intentions of going to some, one of the big schools and being a high school band director and being able to paint clouds in the sky with their conducting of playing their grade 5 music and having their 300-piece marching band and all that kind of stuff. And they might even think that, teaching at a rural school is, beneath them or maybe less challenging or whatever, but you've made a career out of it and a successful career out of it. What were your thoughts initially? How did you feel about teaching in a rural school when you were in college? And then how has your thoughts changed or maybe solidified over the course of your career?
I never had thoughts on rural, urban, suburban, in terms of where my education was going. I grew up in Hillsboro, which is, about 15, 20 minutes away from where I teach and live right now. So, everything's in Jefferson County. So I always had an idea where I would like to have, I was raised in Jefferson County, and I always thought that I would probably come back, because my mom and dad are still alive and they still live here. And, a lot of my family is as well. So I didn't have a lot of concepts or thoughts about, well, I only want to teach in a city school, and I would never teach in a rural school. I didn't even think in terms of small or large, because I don't even think I had a concept of that in terms of like, some schools around me were really large and some were not. And I didn't really pay attention. It wasn't a thing to me. After I got done with Jefferson College, I transferred to Edwardsville for a semester, and then I finished up at UMSL. Through my undergraduate degree at University of Missouri St. Louis with Dr. Richardson and Marvin Sparks, I did think, though, I wanted to be a high school band director. That's all I wanted to do for a lot of the same reasons. I wanted to, conduct all of the great pieces, that we played in college. And then I student taught at Riverview Gardens High School, which was a great experience. I was there with Kevin Walsh. And so I got to see the marching band side of things, which I'm not, I don't have a long, big pedigree in marching band. We had a marching band in high school that was good. I enjoyed it. I had a ball with it. But my college experience didn't have any marching band at all, because I went to Jefferson College, Edwardsville, UMSL. None of them had a marching band. So when I did my student teaching at Riverview Gardens, that was like my first introduction again to marching band from when I was in high school. And Kevin Walsh ran a fine program back then. They were competitive, so I got to see the competition side of things and how camps worked and all of that good stuff. And at the end of that experience, I'm like, yep, this is it. I'm just going to be a high school band director. This is what I want. This is cool. I like it. And then I student taught with Mary Petrillo at Melville, and she did 5 through 8. And I walked in with an open mind. I wasn't thinking that, oh, I'm not going to teach middle school. It was like, oh, yeah, this will be fun too. But I really want to be a high school director. And then when I saw her teach and when I listened to her bands, she had probably the best middle school band I'd ever heard up until that point. And I thought, wait a minute. Middle school bands can sound like this too? That is awesome. So, studying with her, we talked about why her bands were so good all the time. And, a lot of it are the concepts that we covered in the last podcast. But my experience with her just opened up another door. So at that point, I was really excited because the learning curve of a middle school musician is super steep. I mean, if you think about it, they go from in beginning band, and let's just say sixth grade band now, they go from August of their sixth grade band, barely learning how to put the thing together, to at the end of their eighth grade year, playing sometimes grade 2.5, grade 3 literature, right? So that learning curve is exciting to somebody like me, because you're like, this is awesome. I get to see it in real time. So when I finished my student teaching, my only goal at that point was, I think I just want to do it all. Like, I want to do middle school, and I want to do high school, and I want to gig, and I want it. I wanted it all.
Yeah.
So that was more of my concept or my thoughts coming out of college. And then there was a couple schools that had job openings pretty early, and I interviewed for 2 of them. One of them was Jefferson R-VII, and at the end, they offered me the job, and I took it. And I thought, this is great, because I just finished student teaching with Mary Petrillo. She taught 5th through 8th grade. I'm going to teach 5 through 8. Like, I'm just going to be the best Mary Petrillo I can possibly be, right? And then after a while, I did have thoughts again, like, oh, it'd be kind of cool to teach high school. And at that point, our district was talking about adding a high school. So I left the district for a year and then came back. And when I came back, we started talking about building the high school, or, working to pass a bond issue to build the building and all of that. So for the first, I started in 2000. The bond issue passed in 2008, if I remember, and then the high school opened in 2009. So my whole life my career has been like a series of transitions. I went from doing a K through 8, going to another district, coming back, and then starting building a high school from scratch, until finally, I got to do it all. So I do like the autonomy of starting beginners and then graduating them.
Right.
And times, like, if I'm in high school band and I want to complain to the feeder program, I just go look in the mirror and have a talk with that guy and say, hey, man, what have you done to me? And then it's like, we've got some things to fix, and then we fix them, and then we can see, the byproduct of that later on. So, but starting in a rural district, there are some misconceptions. Like, it's a stepping stone job. Like, that's a good one to get started with, until finally that big job that pays a lot of money, that does this, that, and the other, that's the one that you really want. And I've never been motivated by money. It's not a concept to me. As long as I've got, enough money to provide for my family, roof over our head, we get to eat and have a good time, I'm happy. Like, I've never been, because if money was a big thing, I probably wouldn't be in public education. But, I'm motivated by other things. So I think another like, one thing that kind of bothers me when I hear people talk and use words like stepping stone and like, it's a good starter job and all that stuff is look, I don't care who you are or where you're at. Like, every single child deserves a quality music education. So when people make comments like that, and it's not a dig on them, it's more like me internalizing it. I just think of it as like, when you make a comment like that, are you saying that kids in the smaller rural districts don't deserve as good a job, or as good a teacher, or as good a musician, or as good of a program because of A, B, or C? So I also kind of take that as a point of pride. It's like, no, I love teaching in a small school. And life is a series of trade-offs. There are things that we can do in our school that I know that they can't do in the larger schools, right? The larger schools, the crazy methods that we talked about, in the last episode.
Yeah.
If you're working in a larger district where they've adopted a curriculum and they said, look, every single building must use this book and they must do this, right? I don't think I'd be very happy in that kind of system. I like the idea of using education as an experiment. And every single day you get to try something new to see what works and what doesn't work. And I'm fortunate and blessed enough that in this district, they've allowed me that freedom to experiment and fall flat on my face and stand up and brush off and try something else, and I think it's made me a better educator because of it.
I think that's the challenge, though, with small schools, right? Is that you were 100% correct. You've been given the freedom, the freedom to create and the freedom to experiment, and even the freedom to fail. Like you could have failed and been okay. But sometimes I get the impression from some small schools, not all small schools by a long shot, but some small schools, that they're offering band because they're required. They kind of don't care what happens with it. And so then it becomes entirely dependent on the type of educator that gets in there, whether that person cares. And I think everyone that gets into education cares in the beginning, but we've all met some people who stopped caring at some point. And maybe it was because they didn't have support from their administration, or maybe support from their community or whatever. Or maybe they just kind of burned out, which can happen, but then didn't know what to do, so they stuck with it. But I think that's probably where that could be a danger zone for some districts, whereas it may be harder to fail and continue to fail at a more visible district, where maybe it's more obvious what you're doing.
Maybe. I think that, well, first of all, I think that the direct or the band is kind of a reflection of that director at all times.
Of course.
And I say that, even myself, if the band is not performing, or if they've got a sour attitude, the first thing I have to look again is that mirror, going, all right, is there something that I'm doing? What am I doing wrong? And then, move from there. But I do small districts also create an opportunity for that, because sometimes, oftentimes this time of year, actually, you will see lots of job openings around the area or around the state, right? And then if you watch, those websites, often you'll notice that it's the same school districts that tend to pop up, because, teachers will use that as a stepping stone, or feel like that they have to move on. It might be financial, it might be because of family, it might be lots of reasons. But each time a director leaves a district, right, then there's the feeling of the community that this isn't important and it's not a big deal. So, and I even got that when I first started here. I was the 5th director in 4 years, something along those lines. So by the end there was a lady who taught here for 30 years, and after she retired, there was a lot of turnover. And then when I came here, when I finished my 2nd year of teaching, they, somebody told me, like, you're the longest tenured music teacher we've had here in like 10 years. And I was like, whoa, for real? And they said, yeah, because after Miss Purcell retired, there was turnover and nobody would stick around. Plus, I think anybody who sticks around for any length of time, the community will get behind, because they're like, somebody's, taking ownership, and somebody's, planting some roots down.
Yeah.
So
I think that's the other big part. That last thing you just said is putting roots down. I think I see people move a lot from the smaller schools because they didn't move to that area. So maybe they're commuting to that rural school. I know someone in particular that has nearly a 2-hour drive each way to school and back to teach. And, every year that they're there, I'm always amazed. Like, man, I can't believe she's still there teaching there. Like, that's a long way. That's almost 4 hours a day. I think she actually spends a little over 3.5 hours a day just commuting.
Sure.
And then, you know what life of a band director is like. Think about those early mornings and the late nights and everything else, and now tack on an extra hour and a half to that. Like, it's really hard, I think. And so then if a school position comes open that's a 15-minute drive from your home, I can see why that would be really tempting for somebody.
Oh, absolutely. And look, no judgment on my part by any means, because I know there's lots of reasons why people stay or leave. And you're right. Like if you're trying to find that first job, and you're like, my commute is this long, but my family's back here. Like, I can understand that being kind of temporary. But I think I'm more cautious of the people that don't have that reason. It's more of like, no, I'm just going to stay here for a little bit until I move on to bigger, better things.
Right. So tell me some of the benefits of teaching at a small school.
Autonomy. You're your own feeder program. So again, you kind of get to design, kind of the curriculum or what you would like to teach. There's a lot of enthusiasm, not that there's not in a large one, but there's a lot of community pride that seems to wrap up. One of the things that I love about teaching in a small school is what I learned in freshman psychology. And the teacher told this story about, look, if I am in a room of 100 people and I have a heart attack, there's a good chance I'm going to die. Because the 99 people are going to go, somebody else has to take care of this. Somebody else needs to call 911. Somebody else needs to, right? If you are in a room with one other person and you have a heart attack, you have a pretty good shot of surviving of the odds, because that person will feel personal responsibility to make sure that you're taken care of, because they don't want to be, they don't want you to, to pass on their watch. And I kind of took that same philosophy to schools. Like when I started teaching at R-VII, so it's a small community. I say small, we've got there's 300 kids in our high school. Our entire our entire school district, pre-K through 12, is about 1,100 kids, and every teacher knows about every kid, and we know, a lot about them, so that when, we're teaching or we're making modifications, or, we can put on that personal connection to everyone, because like myself, I've had the same kids in my band program from the time they were in 5th or 6th grade. So I get to know these kids for 6 years. That also means I get to know their parents. And then when they graduate and move away and then get married and come back and bring their kids, now I'm starting to teach the kids of kids that I used to teach, back when I first started. And when you start building those relationships year after year, generation after generation, there's a sense of calm and familiarity that is I think works in our favor. Plus, once I decided, I lived somewhere else. I lived about 30 minutes from here when I first started teaching here. And then after 5 years, my wife and I bought a house and we moved, a couple minutes away from the school. So we've been, members of the community now for 15, 16 years, and that also helps out because, again, roots are down. People know that you're here for the long haul and you're wanting to do what's best for the kids of the community.
Yeah.
The other thing is
you get kind of, sorry to interrupt you, but before we went on to something else, you do get those roots in your community that is hard to get in a bigger city. I remember the first time I actually even thought about this was a conversation I had with Curtis and Allison Tipton, and they teach in the Springfield district, and Curtis is at Parkview High School and Allison is at Pleasant View Middle School, and Curtis just his goal, he just really wanted to go and be in some small town, and him and Allison, and they wanted to co-teach band from 6 through 12, and he wanted to be the town band guy, that when he'd go to the grocery store, people would say, oh, hey, that's Mr. Tipton, the band director, and go to the maid right, and they'd know who he is, and the auto mechanic know, hey, Mr. Tipton, how you doing? He just wanted that idealistic kind of small town life, and to hear him describe it, I was like, boy, that is kind of charming. It's very quaint and beautiful, and I don't know as good of a band director as Troy Peterson was here at Springfield Kickapoo High School. I'm sure Troy runs into students and stuff all the time, but he can probably generally go to the grocery store and not know anybody there. Whereas if he would have been the band director in West Plains, or I'm sure with you go to the grocery store, you go out to eat in your town, you're pretty much always going to count on you're going to see a parent or a student anywhere you go, which has its pluses and its minuses.
Right. That's true. That's true. No, that I can relate to that a lot. Being around here for as long as I have, I've taught, many of the students that are in this community and parents. And yeah, we can't go anywhere. And plus I've had the fortunate, time of doing a lot of all district bands, whether it be like, as a guest conductor or a jazz clinician or something along those lines. So then you start, reaching out. And I remember I was in Fredericktown and I had somebody walk past me and go, "Hi, Mr. Sikes." I was like, "Hey, how are you doing?" And my kids go, "Who is that?" And I was like, "Oh, that was Johnny. He played drums in that band that one time that I conducted the honor band." And she goes, You remember his name too?" I said, "I do." We can't go anywhere. So, and it's nice, but that's also helped out in other ways. Like, years ago I had truck problems and my truck was on the side of the road. Everyone knew who it was and they made sure that my truck got towed, and I was helped out quite a bit, So there are times when obviously you want anonymity, but again, life's a series of trade-offs, and I'd rather have that all day, every day.
Yeah.
It's cool.
Yeah.
And I think, and kind of coming back to the small school things, and I was going to mention earlier, I think part of the reason why people, or at least one reason why people leave school is like, all right, I'm in a small school, but I really want the larger one, is when I took this job, my goal was never to compare myself to other programs or other communities or other teachers. I wanted to just be the facilitator of that community and just serve the community as best I can, thinking that if I was coming into this community, every kid here deserves a quality music education. How can I best provide that? And doing that and comparing yourself to other districts who have different values is exhausting, and it's too much. So I think sometimes people are like, well, I can't, my bands are not as large as so-and-so and so-and-so, and they'll never be that way. So I need to move on, and try to find something that can be, kind of always searching for something else. Whereas, I've always felt calm, like, no, and as long as the board and administration have allowed me to like just create that musical opportunity for the community, like I'm very comfortable in some of the decisions we've made over years, and some of that has been, kind of controversial, like no longer participating at festival, or not doing a traditional marching band, or, some of these outside of the box things. I just said, look, here is my vision and here's my justification and here's why I think we should do it this way. And people were supportive, going, hey, that makes sense. Let's try it. And if it doesn't work, then we'll figure something else out.
Yeah.
So, and it was a couple of years ago when I was the jazz vice president for MMEA. We write articles, 4 times a year for the publication. And I remember the topic that came up was, they're like, all right, we want you to talk about the importance of traditions in your community. And at this point, I was like, I don't even know where to begin. Like this, no, I'm not doing this. And then I was talking to my wife and I said, and I'm just kind of ranting. I'm like, what am I going to talk about traditions? I said, look, we started as a K-8 district. I was the however many band director in 4 years. We built a high school from scratch. Every year was completely different. Now we're doing this. Now we're doing that. And I said, our tradition is this. If we like something, we keep doing it. And if it doesn't work, we change it. And she goes, well, write an article about that, dummy. Yes.
Boy, that's very appropriate to the world we live in today, right? I mean, thinking about politics and things that's in our culture and news today, it's like, yeah, we're keeping the things we like and that serve us well, and we're getting rid of the things that we don't. And that's whether it's monuments or statues or policies or laws. That's how we're handling it. God, wouldn't that be so much more productive if we did it that way?
Yeah.
And that's too logical. We can never do that. So then tell me a little bit, you mentioned that one of the things you changed was doing something different in lieu of traditional marching band.
Yeah.
which traditional marching band at this point is kind of an oxymoron because the modern marching band is sort of the antithesis of traditional. But tell me, so what are you doing in lieu of that for your high school outdoor performing ensemble?
So we're still at all the home football games, and we do pep tunes. So we're a pep band in the stands. The difference is we do new music every game. So I treat it kind of like our basketball season, but the concept was I wanted to treat the Friday night football band um, like one of the top 40 gigs that I've played in the past. You know, where you show up, open up the folder, the client wants to hear this music, that's who you play for, and then and everybody has a good time and they dance and then you leave.
Right.
So we just took the concept of kind of like a wedding band. You know, we want to play songs that the people are going to recognize, something that they're going to know, something they're going to enjoy, knowing that they're probably not going to hear this song at the next game because we're going to have some new stuff for them. So we still do parades. We do our
Do you
homecoming
combine
parade.
that? Sorry,
Sure.
do you combine that with a field performance of some sort?
No, we don't touch the field. Nope.
So all that's done from the stands. So during halftime, you're just playing from the stands.
Yeah, we have bleacher stands that are located on the track, and um, the we face the bleacher stands kind of at an angle on the track. So we're actually playing up into the stands, up into the press box.
Gotcha.
So then everybody's looking down at us
Gotcha.
while we're on the stands, and then we're also on the stands and can be in close to the game, and then we play the fight song when they score and all that good stuff.
Any issues with your students? Like if they were to go to college and participate in a college marching band, they'd have to then. Well, you said you're doing parades, so you're teaching them marching and stuff like that. But like are they having to learn drill and all that stuff for the first time in college when they go in?
Yeah, and they're fine. Well,
I mean, not that many are going in and doing it. Like, I don't know that I would change a whole program just because 7 kids are going to go march at Mizzou or something like that. So I'm just trying to get clarity of how you're handling stuff.
Yeah, well, I mean, in the early days of our high school, I had a student that graduated from here in 2013, and we weren't even doing parades back then. We did a homecoming parade, but that was it. We didn't do anything outside of the community. We did our quick homecoming parade on that Friday afternoon, and that was it. So she had barely a concept of marching at all, right? And then she went to CMSU, and within 2 years, she was a drum major. And then when I talked to other directors, the common thread is, look, your kids, they will show up and play. And if your kids can play, we can teach them how to walk and play.
Right.
I've heard that more than once.
Yeah.
So, but I'll tell you, it's even evolved a little bit. Like, we do more now than we've ever done. And next year, we're going to do our very, very first parade competition ever in the history of all humanity in our district. Because again, try new things. If you like them, great. And if you don't, that's fine too.
I've long thought that parades would be such a great way for a small school to set themselves apart because, we often see young director, they're at Broken Hubcap, Missouri, and they're taking their 17-piece band to marching contest to Ozarko, and they're just going to go get crushed because that's super fun, and then not make finals and turn around and come home. And I thought, man, there's places where you could compete in parade, and most bands, when they do parade, like they don't actually really put on any kind of performance. They just walk down the street and play either their part of their show or generally a single stand song. Like wouldn't take that much effort for a director to decide, like, hey, let's actually put a little bit of movement in our parade and actually develop like a street performance for that. And you could probably kill with that, even with a smaller group.
Yeah. Well, the thing about our parade is, like, it's not one concept in our rural community is we don't have a town. Like, we are in unincorporated Jefferson County. So we don't have streets. We have a highway and we have subdivisions,
We got
But-
this dirt road, and the kids ride their horses to.
I mean, we're not quite that rural, but like we don't have aldermen, we don't have a mayor, we don't have
Right. There's no downtown.
nothing at all.
There's no
Like,
main street. Yeah.
No, we are rural.
Gotcha.
So,
Okay.
like even for us to do a parade, our parade is really, we march around campus because I can't take them out on the highway.
Sure.
There's no town square. So it's not like we're a small city or a small town with
Gotcha.
a governing body. We are an unincorporated Jefferson County. Our school district is the center of the community, the absolute center.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So that was the other concept. It's like, well, I mean, plus, another part of my interesting opinions and personality is I downplay competitions as often as I possibly can. I'm just not a fan of them, for all the reasons, kind of like you mentioned earlier. Small school goes to a big program and they get crushed, and then it's like, well, what was the point of that? Also, music is very subjective. Like it's a lot based on opinion. Basketball competitions, I can understand. If I get more points in the baskets than you do, I win. It's not that clear cut in music and the fine arts. So, so we downplay that quite a bit. But again, we're doing our competition, and we've done them in the past, but we just downplay them. Like we don't even really mention them. Show up, have a good time, play as well as you can, enjoy the experience, and leave. Just like I do for any gig, So
it's certainly overrated for sure. I mean, I when I was in high school, my school was really competitive and did a lot of competitive marching events, and I definitely enjoyed that and had a lot of great memories with it.
Sure.
But then my college that I went to, we did drum corps style shows with fewer sets, but the same arrangements. And man, that was a blast. Like we played just fun music. It was challenging and difficult, but it was a lot of fun. And I didn't care that we weren't like competing. We were performing. Like and as a musician, that's what I want to do. I want to perform. I don't care if I win. Like when I play with the 4 state wins, and when we got to perform at MMEA, we weren't doing that to hope to win. We weren't doing that to hope to be the best ensemble of the week or to get some trophy. No, we just wanted to perform, and we wanted to perform for our peers. And it was definitely one of the most nerve-wracking performances of my life, just because, like, man, like these are people that I respect and admire, and now they're gonna sit and listen to me and everyone else play. But it was also the most rewarding as we're making music together and having just some really beautiful moments, and to be able to share this with your friends and peers, like, whew, like that was amazing. God, I can't wait for that stuff to start back up again. Yeah. I'm so eager to get back to playing again. But you're right. So it should be more about performance and less about, did you get a trophy or not?
Yeah, I agree. So we downplay it. So our parade marching has evolved. Again, like I said, we're going to do a couple competitions in the fall. But again, it's really more of getting the kids out of our community and out into the world, so that they can see, other programs, other everything, especially, and I'm, just as passionate about that now, especially after COVID, because we've been locked up for so long and been able to cut. So the moment we get a chance to kind of get out, like, we're doing it.
Yeah. So because you're not doing like the competitive field show and maybe all the so many of the things that you see at a bigger program, does that give you a better work-life balance, or, which is a bit of a misnomer, but I'll leave it just because, or do you still have a terrible work-life balance because you're having to do all the things? Like that's a hard thing for a lot of band directors, right? A lot of band directors, for one thing, it's any band director that stays married longer than 10 years, it's a miracle, because they just are gone so much. They just have so much time commitments taken away. So is that better at a rural school? Is it worse, or is it the same?
I don't know because I've only taught here. So I have nothing to compare that to really. I do know that minus, a lot of marching competitions in the fall, like I'm doing a lot of the same dates everyone else is, large or small. Like we're doing all district and all state and auditions,
Mm-hmm.
and we don't do state large ensemble festival any longer, but we host our own that's non-competitive. So that takes up more time than going to traditional state-sponsored
Mm-hmm.
festival. So I think it really depends on the director, and whatever the director has determined whether or not what they think is important and what they're going to be doing or not. You
Right.
know, my balance my balance has never been awesome because from the time I was 15, I started working, and I went from gigging and teaching to from the time I started working, I was working 2 or 3 jobs, and then I started gigging, and then I was teaching private lessons, and I was going to college, and then when I started teaching here, I still kept up my gigging schedule, and up until COVID, I was probably performing anywhere between 115 to 135 dates a year with the various bands and sub work that I was doing. So I wouldn't say that my balance was great. Like
Well, it
I fill
probably
it
is
up.
though, because the fact that you could do that, and and that's another really good example for people that may also want to perform still, is that, yeah, if you don't have Saturdays that you're taking your band to contest, marching contest, that's a Saturday that you could gig. That's a Saturday that you can play, that you couldn't do otherwise.
Yeah, but like I said, I don't know what's an average marching festival. Like how many marching competitions do you average people go
Um,
to?
I mean, well, if you count like rehearsals and everything else on through weekends, it's August through October. So it's a quarter of the year. And then it's substantial. You know,
Yeah, I guess I was just thinking of the Saturdays. I mean, because again, we're not doing the competitions, but we're doing the football games, we're doing the rehearsals, we're doing the all district, we're doing all state, um, we're doing the Christmas parades and that sort of thing.
yeah.
So if they do an average of, I don't know, 4 or 8 marching competitions a fall, then yeah, I'm not doing those. But
But you're probably also I mean, I don't know, but I'm assuming that you're spending less time. Like I kind of have this love-hate relationship with marching band. Like I love watching DCI. It's a really cool thing to watch, and I enjoyed my years participating in it. But I look at like how much time we spend learning 8 minutes worth of music, to put it to motion on the field. It just seems like a huge, and the money too. Holy cow, the amount of money we spend on marching band. Um, it's a lot, and I often
mhm.
wonder if it's worth it. And the time and money invested in your traditional marching band, I'm just assuming that if I was a high school director and I'm not doing a field show, that gives me a lot more time and uh, less of demand for resources that I could be spending on other things, with my band
Well,
and with my life.
resources wise, yeah, I mean, we take our budget and obviously invest it differently. But also keep in mind that directors in my position also teach 6 through 12. So,
Mm-hmm.
for everything that one would expect a middle school band to do and a high school band to do, like gets wrapped up into one person. So I would
Yeah,
say
I definitely wasn't trying to imply that you don't work as hard. If that is
I
somehow
didn't
coming
take it
through
that
to,
way.
okay, if anyone did, I definitely wasn't saying that.
No.
I just was thinking that you'd have, I don't know, I feel like you're able to do more. Like you're able to kind of see more. You're spending your time in that 6 through 12. You're spending your time on doing various things and not spending a lot of time trying to perfect an 11-minute field show. You know, um, I don't know. Now I think I'm just ranting about the amount of time marching band takes.
No, I do understand what you're. Well, I think I understand what you're saying now. No, I didn't feel that you were saying that at all. Uh, I just think that, as I've said, life's a series of trade-offs. And if a director is not doing this thing, they're probably doing another thing that's taking up just as much time. It's just not as visible,
Sure.
And
it might be more productive though. I mean, you might be doing something with your time that is doing more to enhance a student's musical education than, spending, because I don't know how many hours are spent. I mean, it wouldn't take very long to figure it out, figure out how many hours your typical high school is spending on marching band. But it's probably the largest amount of time. I know it's the largest amount of money that's spent. It's probably also the largest amount of time spent for that one performance that's then just repeated over and over and over again.
Yeah, I think you're right. And that's another reason why we do things the way we do here.
You're kind of getting me convinced that the small school's the way to go, man. Like the more I think about it, the more I'm like, it's kind of a sweet gig to be at a smaller school. I mean, there's, especially if you're into music education and not into just marching band,
I love that comment. That's pretty loaded. I like it though.
Well, I think I just got canceled probably from a lot of our accounts that are like, hey, it's been nice working with you.
I see an edit in your future, Donovan.
Nah, too stupid to edit. I'm going to leave it. But I know for a lot of the accounts that we have, like I know they struggle with that same issue. I think a lot of us thoroughly enjoy the marching activity. And I, go to BOA or whatever and watch some of those groups and just like, wow, it's amazing. But then look and see how much time is spent on it. Look and see how much money is spent on it. Like, that's also amazing. So I don't know. It's certainly something to consider what the value is.
And allow me to clarify, when I watch a well put together marching show or a BOA show, I have nothing but admiration and respect in the amount of time, energy, and resources that go into that.
And creativity.
Right? Sure.
And the skill of teaching that, like that's no easy thing to teach all that stuff. Like
absolutely.
It's impressive. Sure.
But with the same amount of respect that I have for that, I also understand that I cannot take this community and school district and say, by God, if we are going to, be relevant, we have to do this exact same thing because this is the only way to work.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and by that same token, people on the other side, I would hope that they wouldn't look at the work that we're doing and say, well, they're not a real band program because they don't do X, Y, and Z, and if they feel that way, then I don't care.
Well, I mean, I have a lot of candid conversations with people. I never hear that from people in the field. I never hear that from band directors. I actually think there's probably a lot of admiration and respect at the people that are at the large schools, because I think they feel like they have a lot of resources, staff and funding and communities, stuff like that. And when they look at the smaller schools, they just think, man, I don't know how Ron Sikes does it. I don't know how Chris Sprague does it. I don't know how these people do all that, being, the sole person in charge of it. So I think there's a lot more admiration and respect in the field. I have a hunch that's probably not known by maybe like collegiate students, because again, I think a lot of I think the numbers would probably bear out that a lot of the kids that go into music education, I don't know this to be true, I could be wrong. If someone knows I'm wrong on this, please correct me on it. But the number of kids that are involved in music education at the collegiate level, I would imagine a number of those, perhaps a majority, came from some big program. They came from Fox or Blue Springs or Kickapoo or whatever. And that's why they're kind of in it. And so because just like me, I came from Tulsa Union, did my student teaching at Broken Arrow. So yeah, when I was going to be a band director, I wanted to be a band director at a big school because that was all I knew. I had never, I started band in a small school, but all my real formative years were in a big school. And that's what I had experience with. So if you hadn't had experience with the other, then it would make sense you'd think that way.
Absolutely.
What are the downsides to teaching it? Because I feel like we've done a really nice job of the last 45 minutes telling everybody how awesome it is to teach at a small school. What's the parts that's not so awesome?
Um, I
Going to
would
the
say
liquor store, maybe that's a little better now than it used to be. But I remember my wife when she first started teaching in the '90s. Like, she wouldn't hit the liquor store that was in the town she taught. She'd wait till she'd get out of town before she'd do
sure,
that.
sure. No,
I think it's a little different now, but
yeah, I think so. I think the unpredictability of what happens at a small school, because your instrumentation might be great one year and less than desirable the next, or you might have a plan like, man, I think we're going to be able to play this piece of music, and then something happens, or they add a class, and then when they add a class, that affects your enrollment. So it's that unpredictability that comes with small schools. That's tough.
mm-hmm.
In larger schools, well, I'll say this is a double-edged sword, because I think it's a great thing, and I also think this is a challenging thing. But the constant sharing of students, from my point of view, I love it. I think it's great. I love well-rounded kids. I love the fact that in the band program, I've got star athletes and kids that are on the quiz bowl, and like we've got this nice representation of the student body in the band program. It's also tough for planning everything, because you're like, well, that game's scheduled, that's game scheduled. And so sports games are scheduled in one night. And it's like, all right, well, and you want the band there, but they can't be because the constant sharing of the students is a real, it's a challenge, and we work through it fine here. Some years better than others, but for the most part, we do a great job of doing that. That also means sometimes you take away some opportunities don't come that way because of the constant sharing. That was the other reason why we chose this way of doing high school band without the marching band, because my goal again is to give as many kids a music education as possible, and I want them to be involved in music all the way through high school. And if I start doing too much of like the marching band thing, and there's going to be too many more nights, Wednesday nights or Thursday nights that the kids are gone right after they get done with their football practice or right after they get done with their volleyball practice, then it's going to start, wearing some of them down, and I'm going to have fewer and fewer kids sign up for that class again, thus bringing the numbers down, thus not as many kids in the community have a music education. So I try to make it as accessible as possible. But at that same token, there's certain things that we can or can't do because of that small school. But we do as much as we can, So I would say probably the unpredictability, because you don't know what's going to come around the corner. And, COVID was a really great example of that, because of last quarter, just like every other band program across the world, is you use that third and fourth quarter for your recruitment for the following fall, where you take the groups out and they can perform, and the younger kids get excited, and you get that payoff. That was the other thing about fourth quarter last year. The kids didn't get the payoff. They didn't get the end of the year concert where all their hard work kind of came, to one final performance. So that combined with us not recruiting, our numbers are low again, like everybody else in the world. So, but when the numbers are low in a large school, you can take a couple of years of a buffer, and then those numbers kind of work itself out. For smaller schools, like it goes down, and then you just start rebuilding, which is no problem. Like I've said before, we built it before, we'll build it again. But like unpredictability, I would say.
Yeah. Well, and what about financial resources? Do you feel like you have the same resources that larger programs have? Do you feel like it's more challenged? How's that?
No, I'm very blessed to be in this district. Financially, we're in good shape. Like, it's not, for example, when I, bought the drumline equipment however many years ago, we didn't have the budget for the top of the line, which is fine. It's like what we're going to be doing, middle of the line is going to be just fine for us. and we'll take care of it, and everything will be fine. And then because of the long-term plans and like, sticking around and building relationships, like that's another thing that, the budget has been very good, over the last couple of years. And I would say that there hasn't been a time in, I would say, the last 10 years where I've gone to admin and said, look, we really need this. And for them to go, no, it might be like, not this year, let's plan for it. But they've always been very open to purchases and supporting the program. So I've been very blessed in that way. So in terms of like, is my budget larger or smaller than anybody else? I don't know. I just know that
you have what you need.
I have what I need. And if I need something, because even early on when I was talking to, when the superintendent first started working here, I just made one comment and I said, I want you to know I spend district money the way that I spend my own money. And that is, I don't. I'm very frugal. If I'm making a purchase, I'm going to make sure that it's of high quality, that we won't have to replace soon, but it will not be a frivolous expense. I said, I treat this like my own place. And then once we kind of had that conversation, he understands that whatever, if I'm asking for it, it's a necessity. So.
Yeah, it's not just a nice to have or want to have. And then we see that. I've seen that sometimes where directors are purchasing something. I wonder how much that's happening this year too, because a lot of directors had COVID money they had to spend. And I see some of the purchases I went through and I'm like, I wonder if that's going to get used over and over again, or if that's going to get used once or a couple times and then just sit in the corner and stop working, If you have what you need, that's, and again, she hates that I always talk about her, but with Belinda, when she started her career in rural schools, she always had what she needed. She always had, there was always good community support there. Anything she ever needed, district always made sure she had. She actually has a way more restricted budget teaching at Springfield, largest school district in the state, than she ever has at any other place that she's ever taught before.
Well, I'll say this, but part of working in a school district is I have what I need, but I've had to work tremendously hard to get that. And here's an example. In the first couple of years I started working, I believe the only working instrument I had in the band room was a concert bass drum. Okay. So we didn't have hardly any school-owned instruments, right? And if they did, they were just like, they haven't been maintained in 50 years. The timpani, the pedals were broke. They couldn't tune. And the heads were, I believe, the original heads. That's not exaggerating. And I'm from the 50s. I'm not lying. So I went to the superintendent at the time, and he's no longer with us. He's alive. He just retired. But but and he said, well, what do you need? And I wrote everything down, and the thing was, I didn't write out this budget for a 5A school, competing at DOA. It's like I looked at really the demographic. I looked at the numbers in the program. I looked at what I thought could be grown in terms of numbers over the next couple of years. And I just said, this is what I think we need just to be on par with the other middle schools in the area. And he looked at me, he goes, that's great. He goes, write it up and present it to the board. And I went, okay. Like I have to present it to the board? Yeah, it's your program, isn't it? I said, you want me to go in front of the Board of Education in my second year of teaching and ask for $20,000? And he said, yes. I went, okay.
Smart. But who better to do it? Like, he can't explain why you need timpani. Like, he doesn't know what they are. They don't know what they are. I mean, like, no one's going to know why you need this concert snare drum, or what's wrong with the tuba we've got. Isn't a tuba? Like, they don't know. Like, Who better to do it?
And it worked. But it was nerve-wracking because I was like, I thought I'd just submit to you, and then you tell them or ask them, or I don't know how this works. I'm in my second year. He's like, no, go ahead. And then I did it, and they, questioned me on everything, every little thing. Well, why do you need that? Well, why do you need that? So I justified every little expense.
Yeah.
And they finally approved it, but not before working me over, man. It was fun.
Yeah. I got to tell you, Ron, you make teaching at a small school sound really appealing. Sometimes more appealing than owning and operating a bunch of music stores.
Man, well, I tell you, like I said, I think sometimes it's just mindset too. Like wherever you're at, you can be happy doing what you're doing. You know,
Yeah.
you just have to. Because I mean, I can tell you right now, in the last couple of weeks, we've had some really challenging times with quarantines and COVID, and like preparing for a concert, and kids being virtual and doing less. Like there are plenty of things to kind of be sour about, especially this year. But I just refuse to do that. I was like, we're going to take this as an opportunity. COVID is going to teach us some lessons about what's really important in the program and how we're going to deliver instruction, and making sure that, we put the needs of all the kids first at all times, because we don't know what they're going through at home with COVID and families and whatnot. So I just looked at everything like this is, again, it's cross training. The stuff I'm learning this year is just going to make me better tomorrow and better next year. And I would hope to think that, no matter where I was teaching, large or small, rural, suburban or urban, I'd have the same outset.
Yeah. Dude, this is awesome, man. This is such a great conversation. This has been 2 hours. We've been talking for 2 hours. That's
right
unbelievable. On. It's really enjoyable though. Yeah, you did not disappoint. The people that were excited to hear what you have to say, I can see why. This is so much fun. All right, I want to have you back and do this again if you're up for it, because
sure.
This is really fun. I love people that make me think. I love people that change my perceptions or better inform my knowledge on something, and you definitely have an outside the box way of looking at stuff, which I totally dig. Which is really great.
As I always tell my kids, hey, I'm like an onion. I got many layers.
That's right. That's right.